Hi guys, welcome back to the grim darkness of Warhammer 40k. Today, we dive into the eternal suffering of the Emperor, a god who cannot die, a fate more terrifying than any battlefield in the galaxy. The day begins, as all days do, beneath the shadow of the spires. From his balcony of burnished adamantium, the planetary governor gazes down upon the endless ocean of metal and ash that is his dominion. Hive towers rise like blackened needles, piercing the poisoned clouds. Rivers of smoke wind between them like veins of a dying giant. Far below, the city hums with mechanical life. Billions of voices whispering, crying, praying, cursing. Yet from this height, it all blends into a single distant murmur. To him, it sounds like worship. The palace itself is a fortress of impossible scale, a relic of an age when artistry was indistinguishable from fanaticism. Marble floors inlaid with gold circuitry, vaulted ceilings carved with the likeness of the Emperor's visage, repeated 1,000 times in adoration. Every corridor glows with sacred fire. Every wall bleeds incense. Servitors drift through the air like ghosts, their flesh fused with cables, their mouths whispering binary hymns as they polish the gilded bones of a decaying empire. And at the center of it all, him. He is the law made flesh, the Emperor's will embodied upon this world. His word can condemn or sanctify with equal weight. When he lifts a finger, armies march. When he signs a decree, millions live or die. His insignia, a sigil of the Aquila carved from obsidian and brass, hangs across his chest like a shackle made of glory. Yet even as he stands there, surveying the realm that worships his name, a faint bitterness curls beneath the pride. Power, he has learned, does not feel like strength. It feels like waiting. He watches the horizon where the sun never truly rises, only glows dimly through the smog, a sickly orange eye half closed in exhaustion. He imagines it watching him in return, judging, measuring, perhaps already preparing to set forever. Behind him, the palace stirs. The morning rituals begin. Choirs of children bred for purity chant litanies of obedience from balconies lined with gold leaf. Their thin voices echo through the halls like the cries of angels strangled by duty. Administratum scribes march in precise formation, bearing stacks of parchment that detail the deaths, births, and deaths of billions, numbers too vast to mean anything, yet sacred enough to justify everything. He walks through the grand hall of governance, and the crowd parts like water. Nobles bow so low their jeweled foreheads touch the cold floor. High priests raise censers of smoke heavy with blessed oils. Everyone chants the same words. Av Governor, the voice of Terra, the warden of the Emperor's will. The words should inspire him. Once they did. Now they sound like an epitaph spoken too early. At the heart of the hall sits his throne, a structure of steel and stained glass depicting scenes of conquest and martyrdom. When he takes his seat, a mechanical choir embedded in the walls begins to sing an automated hymn. Its pitch perfect, its tone soulless. The throne's circuits link with the augmetic implants in his spine, feeding him data, population growth, tithes delivered, unrest reported, heresy suspected. The numbers flow into him like blood through new veins. They tell him the world is functioning, productive, obedient. They also tell him the truth he does not speak, that every cycle, the tithe demands more, and the people give less. That the lower hives have not seen sunlight in generations, that food riots have become rituals in themselves, pacified only by the promise of imperial salvation. He knows these things, and he does nothing, because that is the essence of governance in the Imperium. Not to rule, but to endure, to hold the line, to preserve the illusion that the Emperor still watches, still cares, still listens. He turns his gaze toward the central spire, where the cathedral of the imperial cult pierces the clouds. Its bells toll incessantly, day and night, proclaiming the same truth, that faith is survival, and doubt is heresy, sometimes late at night. He wonders if even the bells believe what they are saying. An attendant approaches, kneeling so low the polished floor reflects the fear on his face. He presents a hollow tablet glowing with the daily reports. The governor takes it without a word, scanning columns of data. Every line is perfect. Every province is loyal. Every tithe delivered. A world without flaw. a lie so perfect it almost feels holy. He signs the bottom of the document with the seal of his office, the stylized twin-headed eagle pressing hot wax into the surface. The act feels meaningless, like writing upon ash. Outside, the hive towers burn faintly with the dawn's smog light. Transport ships crawl across the sky, ferrying goods and bodies between manufactoria and hab blocks. The governor's reflection stares back at him from the window, regal, composed, untouched by the decay below. And yet, for all his robes of silk and armor of gold, he cannot escape the smell. It seeps through the marble walls, through the perfumed air, through the incense and oil. The scent of metal, sweat, smoke, rot. The scent of a world dying too slowly to notice. He looks down once more. Somewhere in the depths of the hive, a factory explosion sends a plume of fire into the sky. Thousands dead, perhaps tens of thousands. Another report will come. Another signature will fix it. Another tithe will leave orbit. The machine will continue to turn. He tells himself it is enough. That order is life, that the Emperor demands endurance, not compassion. But as the morning bells echo through the air, he feels a tremor. Faint, almost imperceptible, beneath his feet. The floor shudders. The lights flicker. The sound fades just as quickly as it came, but in that instant he feels the first whisper of something he has not felt in decades. Fear. He dismisses it with a wave of the hand. There are no omens here, only bureaucracy. Still, as he returns to his throne, the echo lingers in his thoughts. The faint vibration beneath the marble, the taste of ash on his tongue, the weight of silence pressing against the edges of his mind. And far above the polluted clouds, beyond the reach of mortal eyes, a shadow begins to move across the star, silent, vast and inevitable. But for now, he does not see it. For now, he tells himself he rules, and the world below continues to burn in quiet obedience. The first sign does not come as fire or thunder. It comes as a whisper. At first, it is faint, no more than a tremor at the edge of awareness, like the sigh of the wind slipping through the broken rafters of the hive. But soon it grows, swells into something vast, a vibration that hums within the bones of the planet itself. Every world in the Imperium hums with this same pulse. Billions live and die beneath its rhythm, never hearing it, never feeling it. But those attuned to the warp, the psychers, the dreamers, the damned, they hear it clearly. A single wordless command woven through every breath they take, every thought they think. It is not a voice, but it commands like one. Does not speak, but it orders. It is the weight of eternity pressing down upon mortal minds. The will of the galaxy condensed into one unending imperative. Continue. On Terra, the Adeptus Mechanicus kneel before the Golden Throne. The air is thick with smoke and sanctified oil. The scent of burning incense mingled with the sharp tang of ozone. The chamber is so vast it could swallow cities. The light that fills it is golden and cold. Not sunlight, but something older. Something sacred and pitiless. They move with precision born of fear, their every step dictated by ancient scripture. The rituals are older than any living memory. They no longer understand the machine they serve. They only obey it. Servitors shuffle between them, their flesh scarred with litanies of maintenance. Tech priests chant in binary monotone as they adjust valves and recalibrate conduits. 1,000 sacred instruments hum in unison, their sounds forming a single perfect note, the note of preservation. And at the heart of it all lies the throne, a mountain of metal and divinity. Its cables thrum with the blood of sacrificed psychers. Its vents hiss the breath of the dying. Every 24 hours, 1,000 souls are consumed to sustain its purpose. They are brought in chains, their eyes sealed, their mouths muttering prayers they cannot comprehend. Some cry for mercy, some laugh, some are silent. None survive. Their essence is torn from their bodies, fed into the mechanisms that keep the Emperor's light burning across the warp. The adepts do not weep. They record, they adjust, they pray. Each death is a data point, each scream another act of worship. Above them, the Astronomicon blazes, the psychic beacon that guides humanity through the darkness between stars. It burns with the stolen life of every psyker who dies upon the throne. It burns with the Emperor's agony, and somewhere within that agony, a consciousness still stirs. He feels the offering. He feels the souls as they die. Each one arrives like a spark of fire upon his awareness. A flicker of pain, then silence. The momentary flare of a life extinguished in his name. For an instant he sees through their eyes. The terror, the confusion, the pleading belief that this sacrifice means something. And then the void. Their deaths feed him, their devotion sustains him, their screams become the pulse that drives the machinery of his unending existence. He wishes he could forget, but he cannot. The whispers of their dying. Thoughts echo within his mind, layer upon layer, until they form something greater than the sum of all voices. A single vast chorus of despair. It does not accuse. It does not pray. It only commands you must not rest. You must not stop. You must not die. He cannot tell if it is their collective will or his own reflection that speaks. He only knows that it is absolute. Through the haze of pain and static, he reaches out, across the tides of the warp, across the flickering constellations of human thought. His awareness brushes against 1,000 worlds, 1,000,000 souls, the faint flicker of every mind that believes in him. And everywhere he feels the same hunger, the same fear, the same desperate need for salvation. The Imperium believes that he commands it, but in truth it commands him. Their faith has become a chain. Every prayer strengthens it. Every whisper of devotion tightens it. The belief that he must endure has become the iron law of reality itself. He feels it in the rhythm of the throne, in the beating of the machine that devours him. Each hiss of the vents, each pulse of the conduits, each flare of plasma through sacred circuitry, all of it repeats the same wordless decree. Continue, continue, continue. He cannot escape it. Even his own thoughts are no longer his own. They echo the same refrain, reshaped by millennia of blind worship. What once was will has become function. What once was purpose has become necessity. He remembers dimly a time before this, when his existence was defined by creation, by vision, by the dream of unity. Now it is defined by persistence, by endurance, by the refusal of death. Outside the palace walls, the priests chant their endless hymns. Across the galaxy, billions kneel in temples and factories and warships, repeating prayers that have lost all meaning. The Emperor protects. The Emperor hears them all. Each word strikes his consciousness like a hammer. Each prayer is both comfort and curse. There is no mercy in their worship, only obligation. And as the next wave of psychers is dragged screaming toward the throne, he feels the decree rising again, louder now, like the voice of the cosmos itself, speaking through the bones of reality. It has no origin. It has no end. It simply is. Continue. The word reverberates through every atom of his being. It binds his fading consciousness to the machinery that imprisons him. It ignites the Astronomicon once more, sending its light flaring across the warp. Somewhere, a navigator sees the beacon and smiles in relief. Somewhere an Imperial ship finds its path through madness. Somewhere another world survives another day. And within the throne, the Emperor endures, not because he chooses to, but because the universe refuses to let him die. He can no longer remember when the command began. He only knows that it will never end. The adepts bow as the energy levels stabilize. The chanting reaches its crescendo. The last of the psychers burns away, leaving nothing but light. In the silence that follows, he almost believes it is over. But the pulse begins again. The machine breathes again. The decree echoes again, continue. And so he does. Somewhere between the static and the silence, a question forms. It drifts like smoke through the ruins of his mind. Faint, hesitant, almost ashamed of existing at all. Is this salvation or punishment? For a long while, there is no answer. Only the hum of the throne, that endless mechanical chant of obedience, echoing through the void of his awareness. The sound has become the rhythm of his existence, the heartbeat of eternity itself. He cannot remember when it began, or whether it was ever silent. Perhaps it has always been there, and he is only now learning to hear it. He tries to remember his own voice, but it has been too long since he used it. Words are unnecessary here. Thought itself has become a burden, heavy and unyielding, sinking into the tar of centuries. Still, the question persists. Not loud, but constant, like a drop of water carving stone. Was this what I intended? Once he was certain of everything. Once he stood among mortals as a god in flesh, shaping galaxies with the precision of a sculptor and the fury of a storm. His purpose was pure. His will was law. His dream, unification, enlightenment, order, burned brighter than the stars themselves. But now that same fire consumes him from within. His consciousness floats within the machinery, bound to the circuits and conduits that pierce his withered flesh. He feels them all, the pulse of plasma through sacred veins, the hiss of coolant that replaces blood, the slow, grinding turn of cogitators that think in his stead. Each sound is familiar, intimate. Each movement is pain, and yet without them he would cease. So he wonders what remains of the man he once was. Is he still the emperor of mankind? Or merely the echo of an idea, trapped inside a machine that refuses to let him fade? He searches his own memories for answers, but they come to him in fragments, as if torn pages drifting in the dark. The faces of his sons, the Primarchs, flicker across his thoughts. Warriors, demigods, betrayers, beloved children twisted by destiny. He remembers their laughter, their rage, their tears. He remembers the moment each was lost. And then, as always, he remembers Horus, the wound never healed. It cannot. It is older than time, deeper than flesh. The memory of that final battle, the betrayal, the sorrow, the love turned to ruin, is etched into the core of his existence. It plays endlessly within him, a litany of failure. He tells himself that his suffering serves a purpose, that every second he endures sustains humanity, keeps the warp at bay, holds chaos in check. But another voice, smaller, colder, whispers that perhaps this is not duty. Perhaps this is penance. Perhaps the gods he defied have not destroyed him, because this is the more exquisite punishment, to make him watch as everything he built decays. He sees the Imperium through the haze of his psychic sight. Once it was a dream of unity. Now it is an empire of ashes. The administratum feasts upon bureaucracy. The ecclesiarchy preaches his divinity while forgetting his truth. The mechanicus worships the tools he left behind but cannot comprehend their purpose. And the people, his people, live and die in ignorance, believing that the emperor protects, never realizing he is as much their prisoner as their god. He feels their prayers like chains. Each act of faith binds him tighter, weaving a web of belief so dense that even death cannot break it. Their worship sustains him, but it also imprisons him. Every whispered Ave Imperator is a nail in the coffin of his humanity. He remembers the warmth of sunlight, the feel of earth beneath his hands, the laughter of men unburdened by fear. These memories are fading, slipping through his grasp like sand through dying fingers. In their place remains only the cold light of divinity, eternal, unchanging, sterile. He cannot cry. His eyes have long since withered away, but if he could, the tears would be oil, not water. He wonders, if he were to let go, if he were to silence the Astronomicon and release the energy that sustains him, would it be the end? Or would the Imperium's faith simply forge him anew, reborn as an idea beyond even his control? Would he die or multiply? The thought terrifies him, not because he fears death, but because he fears eternity without purpose. He fears the endless continuation of being, stripped of choice, stripped of meaning, until even thought itself becomes another mechanical reflex. He tries to remember his own name. Not emperor, not master of mankind, not god of the Imperium. The name he bore before the galaxy knew him. The one spoken softly, long before conquest, before empire, before legend. But the machine will not let him. It hums louder now, drowning out everything. The sound is both inside and outside of him. The mechanicus chant their litanies. The servitors adjust their valves. The psychers scream as they burn. And through it all, the golden throne pulses with a rhythm that matches his fading heartbeat. Somewhere deep within, he senses movement. The brush of something vast and familiar against the edges of his mind. The warp stirs, restless. The entities beyond reality reach for him, curious, mocking. They smell his doubt like blood in the water, and he wonders if, in their own way, they are right. Perhaps this is not the triumph of light over darkness. Perhaps this is what damnation truly looks like. Not oblivion, but consciousness without end. He tries to silence the thought. He tells himself this suffering is necessary, that it means something, that humanity still depends on him. But deep within the machinery, in the hollow between one heartbeat and the next, a quiet truth echoes, one that he cannot deny. He no longer knows whether he is saving mankind or merely preventing it from joining him in damnation. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor of mankind begins to doubt himself. The truth does not arrive as revelation. It arrives as collapse. The great hall trembles beneath the weight of the storm outside, not of wind or thunder, but of something older, deeper, hungry. The lights flicker, painting the marble pillars in flashes of gold and crimson. Each pulse of illumination seems to catch the world mid-decay. Frescoes of the Emperor's triumph now crawling with cracks. The statues of saints shedding flakes of dust like dying skin. The governor stands amid the ruin, his robes hanging heavy with sweat and incense, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights of prayer and denial. Around him, his advisors murmur in broken voices, their faith wearing thin beneath the gravity of what they all sense but dare not name. Then the chamber doors open. A gust of cold air follows, carrying the scent of ozone and the unmistakable iron tang of sanctioned death. 2 stormtroopers step inside, their carapace armor blackened with the mark of the Inquisition. Between them walks a figure wrapped in a cloak of scorched crimson, an Inquisitor. The governor's heart stumbles in his chest. For a man of his rank, the arrival of such a figure is both a benediction and a sentence. He tries to compose himself, straightening the folds of his robe, summoning the vestige of authority that once commanded armies. But the Inquisitor does not kneel nor offer salute. The sigil of the Ordo Hereticus gleams at his throat like a blade. Your world, the Inquisitor says, voice soft, deliberate, almost weary, is already lost. The words hang in the air, heavy and absolute. At first, no one moves. The governor blinks, unsure if he has heard correctly. Lost? He repeats, his voice cracking in disbelief. Exaggeration, surely. The tithes are paid, the defenses hold, the faith is corrupted. The Inquisitor interrupts. There is no emotion in his tone, only the precision of a surgeon cutting into diseased flesh. Your prayers do not ascend to Terra. They are devoured before they ever reach the Astronomicon. Something has taken root beneath your hives, something that feeds on your devotion. The words strike harder than any bullet. He laughs, a desperate sound, brittle and hollow. Impossible. Our astropaths report no warp disturbances. The Mechanicus, the Inquisitor says, turning his gaze upon the robed tech priest nearby, are blind. Their instruments cannot measure faith, and faith is where it began. He steps closer, and for the first time the governor sees his eyes. Not glowing, not burning, but infinitely tired. The eyes of a man who has seen too many truths to believe in mercy. Your planet, the Inquisitor continues, has been touched by something within the warp, a parasite of thought. It hides not in the air or the soil, but in the soul. Every prayer you've offered, every word spoken in the Emperor's name, it has echoed back from the void, twisted, reshaped. You have been worshipping something else. The governor staggers back. Blasphemy! He roars, more out of fear than conviction. How dare you accuse me? I am not accusing you, the Inquisitor replies quietly. I am informing you. The silence that follows is unbearable. The only sound is the soft whine of the Auspex units attached to the Inquisitor's gauntlet, pulsing with readings that defy logic, psychic resonance off the scale, emanating not from the city, not from the people, but from the very palace itself. The governor feels it now, that hum deep beneath the floor like a second heartbeat buried within the stone. He has felt it for years without noticing, mistaking it for the vibration of industry, of machinery, of life. Now he realizes it is something else entirely. Something alive. The Inquisitor's gaze sharpens. It began with you. The words freeze the governor where he stands. When you took office, your presence, your will, your pride, it was strong. You ruled this world as the Emperor's voice. But the warp does not need invitation, only attention. And you, governor, gave it that. You believed your authority divine, and in doing so, you opened the door. The parasite found a beacon in you, a man whose faith was vast enough to shape reality. It whispered to you. It learned from you. It became you. The governor shakes his head violently. No, I have been loyal all my life. Every decree I signed, every tithe I collected, every sermon recited in his name was fuel, the Inquisitor finishes. Every act of devotion, every ritual of obedience, every moment of pride. You have been feeding it for decades. Now it has grown beyond you. The entire population sings its will without knowing it. Their prayers are hymns to the void. The room tilts. The governor grips the edge of the dais to steady himself. His mind claws for denial, for logic, for anything to hold on to. But everywhere he turns, he finds the same pattern repeating, the same unseen symmetry. The banners that line the hall, the sacred sigils, twist in the flickering light, forming shapes that seem almost alive. He blinks and the illusions vanish. But the chill remains. What must be done? He whispers. The Inquisitor exhales, a sound that might have been a sigh or a prayer. What must always be done? He produces a data slate, its surface already bearing the sigil of Exterminatus. The governor's breath catches as he recognizes it. The seal of absolute authority, the power to erase an entire world. You can't, he says, voice trembling. There are billions. There are none, the Inquisitor replies flatly. They are already dead. What remains are vessels, puppets, echoes wearing flesh. The words strike harder than any weapon. The governor's knees buckle. He sees in a single terrible flash the truth he has denied for months. The hollow eyes of his priests, the fervor of his soldiers, the laughter of the children during Mass. All of it perfectly synchronized, perfectly devout. Too perfect, not faith, programming. The Inquisitor steps closer, lowering his voice. Understand this, Governor. The warp does not corrupt the unfaithful. It corrupts the faithful. It takes devotion and hollows it, until only the shell remains. You are not its victim. You are its foundation. For the first time, the governor cannot breathe. He feels something moving behind his eyes. Not thought, but something watching his thoughts. A flicker in the periphery of his mind, vast and smiling. He stumbles backward, clutching his head. No, it can't be. The Inquisitor's expression softens, almost pitying. It already is, he raises the data slate. The seal glows red. Exterminatus is not vengeance. It is mercy. The governor falls to his knees. His reflection in the polished marble no longer looks human. The eyes too bright, the smile too wide. And for a heartbeat he understands. The warp had not invaded his world. It had bloomed from within him. The Inquisitor turns away. The storm outside howls and the bells of the hive begin to toll, not in mourning, but in anticipation. The veil is lifted, and beneath it the governor finally sees what he has become. The prayer begins not with faith, but with noise. A low hum fills the chamber, the mechanical hymn of 1,000 sacred engines breathing in unison. Pistons sigh, valves hiss, plasma conduits throb with ancient rhythm. The air smells of oil and sanctified ozone, thick enough to choke lungs not bred for the atmosphere of divinity. It is less a temple than a wound that has never healed, that must never heal. The tech priest Magos kneels at the base of the golden throne. His metal limbs click and whir softly as he lowers himself into the position of reverence. The servo skulls above him drift in lazy circles, each projecting the litanies of maintenance across the golden walls in shifting red runes. He has been here every day of his life for 273 years. He will die here as his predecessor did, and as countless others will after him. To him, this chamber is the holiest place in existence, not because of beauty or grandeur, but because it is the intersection of all that is divine and all that is mechanical. In the Magos Creed, there is no boundary between the two. Flesh is weakness, steel is salvation, data is prayer. He raises his mechadendrites toward the throne, their tips glimmering with faint blue light. His voice, half human and half vox-distorted static, breaks the silence. Gloria in machina, gloria in imperatore. The circuit endures. His words echo through the vaults, bouncing off the golden arches and vanishing into the mechanical roar. Behind him, ranks of lesser adepts murmur their responses, their voices layered into one monotone chant, thousands of whispers forming a single thought, a single obedience. To an outsider, it might seem grotesque, this worship of machine and corpse entwined. But to the Adeptus Mechanicus, there is no distinction. The Emperor is the machine. The machine is the Emperor. The throne is not his prison. It is his perfection, and so they pray. The Magos extends a hand, half metal, half decayed flesh, and places it against the gilded base of the throne. The metal is cold, always cold. Beneath his palm, he feels the faint vibration of unimaginable power, the ceaseless thrum of psychic energy flowing through conduits older than recorded history. He mistakes it for heartbeat. By the Omnissiah's will, he murmurs, the Emperor lives. By his life, humanity endures. By endurance, we maintain the order of the machine. He believes these words absolutely. He has never questioned them. He does not know that what he touches is not life, but inertia. The endless momentum of a god who cannot die and cannot rest. To him, the endless sacrifice of psychers is sacred law, a necessity as immutable as gravity. Every day 1,000 souls burn away in the shadow of the throne. Every day their screams are translated into energy, their deaths into light. He records their passing with the precision of a priest counting rosary beads. Each spark sustains the beacon, he says softly to the acolyte beside him, a trembling novice whose organic eye still leaks tears. Do not weep, child. In their dissolution, they are made pure. Their essence becomes the Astronomicon, the light that guides mankind through the storm. The novice nods, swallowing hard, his voice barely audible through the respirator mask. But Magos, do they know? The Magos tilts his head. The sound of servos turning echoes through the hall like the grinding of ancient gears. Know what? That they are being fed to. The acolyte hesitates, glancing toward the throne, where the dim silhouette of the Emperor rests motionless, to something that no longer breathes. The Magos stares at him for a long, unbroken moment. Then he laughs, a metallic, distorted sound that vibrates through his vox emitter like static thunder. You misunderstand, Initiate. The Emperor is beyond breath. Breath is for the living, and the living are flawed. What he has become is purity. The flesh failed. The machine endures. His silence is not death. It is transcendence. He gestures toward the throne, toward the massive entangled cables that pierce the Emperor's withered form like veins of gold and iron. Observe the pattern. Observe the perfection. Every circuit, every conduit, every pulse of energy. It all sings in harmony with his will. The Emperor does not sleep. He calculates. He maintains. He exists beyond decay. The acolyte looks up, eyes wide, and for a moment he almost believes. The spectacle is too immense to doubt. The throne hums with godlike resonance. The light that spills from its core is blinding, warm, golden, beautiful. And yet, behind that brilliance, there is something else. Something that stirs beneath the radiance. Something that feels like sorrow. The Magos does not notice. His eyes are cybernetic lenses. They see only energy, voltage, flow. They do not see the remnants of flesh. They do not see the way the Emperor's skin has fused to the metal, how the gold has grown into the bone. They do not see the hollow sockets where once there were eyes. Eyes that saw everything, that chose everything. They see function, not agony. They see divinity, not decay. The Magos continues, his voice rising into a fervent monotone. Understand, child. The Emperor's existence is the great equation, the constant upon which the Imperium balances. If he were to die, the warp would rise unchecked. Humanity would drown in madness. The throne is not his tomb, it is his anchor. He endures not for himself, but for all. He pauses, then lowers his tone to something almost tender. His suffering is not suffering. It is necessity. Suffering is a word for the weak. The machine does not suffer. It performs. He closes his eyes, or rather, he simulates the gesture. In the depths of his mind, binary prayers flicker like candlelight. Do we want see one to one hand? There you want one to one heißen war. There you want one to why. You want manchen mont manchen date. There want mont. There you want and man to monchen and wine and. Glory every day, he says. We give him what he requires. Every day the cycle renews. It must, it will. It always has. Outside, the echo of the psycher's screams reaches the chamber, muffled by walls of sacred metal. The sound blends with the hum of machinery until the two are indistinguishable. Suffering transmuted into harmony. The acolyte trembles. And if he ever wished to rest? The Magos turns his head slowly, as if the question were not merely blasphemous but incomprehensible. Rest? There is no such function in the equation. The Emperor is. He does not wish. He does not dream. He endures. He reaches out again, placing his hand upon the throne's base and whispers, "Endurance is divinity." The throne hums in reply. To the Magos, it is affirmation. To the thing within, it is pain. Within the labyrinth of his dying flesh, the Emperor hears the prayer. Every word, every proclamation of devotion. He feels the touch of the tech priest's metallic hand, cold against his decaying skin. He feels the machinery gnawing through his nerves like parasites made of light. He wants to scream, but the machine converts the impulse into data. The Magos rises, satisfied. He turns to his followers. "Praise the continuity," he intones. "Praise the endurance of the machine god. Praise the Emperor," they echo. And somewhere deep within the silence, the Emperor answers, not in words, but in a thought so faint it might be mistaken for static. "I am not alive." But the adepts do not hear. They never will. To them, the hum of the throne is a hymn. To him, it is the sound of eternity devouring itself. There is no pain at first, only light. It comes not as a burst or a flash, but as a tide, endless, patient, and consuming. It washes over him, through him, as him, until the boundaries between self and radiance dissolve completely. For a long moment, or perhaps for eternity, he cannot tell whether he is rising or falling. The warp has no direction, no gravity, no mercy. Only movement. He drifts within it, stripped of form, stripped of name. The last fragments of the governor, the man who once commanded millions, who once stood above the hives and thought himself a god, scatter like dust upon a cosmic wind. His memories do not vanish. They bleed. They seep outward into the current, becoming indistinguishable from the voices that already fill this place. Billions upon billions of thoughts echoing in perfect, dreadful harmony. At first, he fears it. He tries to gather himself, to hold on to the remnants of what he was. The sound of his own voice, the weight of his signet ring, the smell of incense in his palace. But every attempt fails. Each memory he grasps disintegrates into light, until he realizes that the act of remembering itself is meaningless here. Here, thought is creation, and creation is death. The warp stretches around him like an infinite ocean of color, shifting, screaming color. There are no shapes, only impressions. Galaxies collapsing into themselves, faces emerging and fading, wings made of fire and sorrow. The air, if it can be called that, hums with the residue of prayers, all spoken at once, all for the same unreachable God. For the first time, he feels what it means to be unbound. There is no gravity, no flesh, no heartbeat tethering him to the burden of existence. There is only awareness, pure and fluid. It should be freedom. It feels like freedom, but it is not. It is absorption. He realizes dimly that he is not alone. Everywhere around him, other lights drift, countless motes of consciousness suspended within the luminant void. They shimmer in colors beyond sight, each one a soul freed from the weight of matter, each one whispering fragments of who they once were. Soldiers, priests, servitors, lovers, heretics, all equal here, all meaningless. They swirl together, merging and parting like sparks in a solar flare. He reaches toward them, not with hands, for he has none, but with will. The contact is overwhelming. Each soul he touches floods him with memory and sensation. The laughter of a child, the taste of blood, the agony of faith betrayed. Should destroy him, but instead it expands him. His awareness stretches until it encompasses 1,000 lives, 1,000 deaths, 1,000 regrets. He begins to understand. This is not heaven. This is not damnation. This is what lies between the Sea of Souls, the invisible machinery of the Astronomicon. The realization comes like thunder. Though there is no sound, he feels it, vast and impossible, pulsing in the distance. A radiance that outshines everything. A beacon burning through the madness of the warp. Its light calls to him, irresistible and absolute. He knows it by instinct. by the memory written into every human soul. The Emperor, or what remains of him. The Astronomicon is not merely light. It is will. It is the Emperor's consciousness fractured into a billion shards sustained by sacrifice and faith. And he, the governor, the sinner, the redeemed, is now one of those shards. He feels himself drawn toward the radiance, helpless as gravity. The closer he drifts, the more his individuality erodes. His thoughts blur into a chorus of others, a choir without number, a psalm of agony and purpose. I was a governor. I was a soldier. I was a mother. I was a believer. The words lose meaning. They blend into one truth, one identity that is not identity but function. He can feel the Emperor's mind all around him. Vast, incomprehensible, ancient beyond reckoning. To touch it is to feel every emotion that ever existed, magnified into infinity. Love so bright it burns, sorrow so deep it reshapes the stars. Rage so pure it becomes light. He sees flashes, moments, memories, fragments of divinity. The siege of Terra, the fall of Horus, the creation of the Imperium, the endless prayers of billions echoing across time. And beneath it all, the same question that haunts even this god. What was it all for? The governor wants to answer, but he cannot remember how to form words. He cannot remember what words are. Instead, he offers himself, his last spark of consciousness, to the light. The merging is not gentle. It feels like being burned alive, dissolved, rewritten. Every molecule of his being is torn apart and rearranged into a pattern older than the stars. He feels himself stretched thin across eternity, a strand of thought woven into a tapestry of divine will. The agony is unbearable. The ecstasy is infinite. When it ends, there is no he left to bear witness, only the light. The Astronomicon blazes brighter for an instant, a flare seen by navigators across 1,000 sectors. Ships adrift in the darkness of the warp suddenly find their path again. Worlds on the brink of despair feel a flicker of hope without knowing why. The governor's consciousness, now only a whisper within the radiance, senses this and understands. His death, his fear, his failure, all of it was fuel. All of it had purpose. He does not rejoice. He does not mourn. He simply is. He floats within the Emperor's mind, one thought among countless others, all sustaining the impossible illusion of life. The boundary between master and servant, god and worshipper, dissolves into unity. There is no longer a governor, no longer a sinner, only light, only purpose. He has become part of the great machine of salvation and damnation that keeps humanity alive. And somewhere, deep within the radiant storm, the Emperor stirs. For a fleeting moment, perhaps he feels it too. A new spark joining the endless flame. A single voice, newly born into the chorus, whispers into the void. I see now. The Astronomicon answers with silence, then with light. Always with light.